national broadcaster after what he said were 37 fantastic years. RTE's Director General Kevin Backhurst said Mr Dobson brought a calm authority to the most important stories and represented the best in public service broadcasting. Brian will leave the station in April and Brian Dobson joins me now in studio. Brian, 37 years, many of them spent in that very chair. It's just like old times really. Why have you decided to go now?
Well, I will be retiring anyway next year, so I'm going a little bit early, but not really that early, and I just thought the time had come. I have been fortunate enough in those 37 years to do everything in journalism that I would have wanted to have done. I've been fortunate to have lived through fascinating times. There's an old Chinese curse, isn't there? May you live in interesting times. Well, those of us who work in journalism and reporting, actually that's a blessing. And we have lived in fascinating times, both here in Ireland and around the world. So I've been able to cover some extraordinary stories. And I'd just like to spend some more time with my friends, with my family, and also see maybe if there's a new chapter, a new page to turn.
And Brian, as you said, you've covered fantastic stories. What were the standout moments for you?
Oh, well, I mean, over 37 years, there's a lot of standout moments. One of my earliest foreign assignments was being sent to South Africa to cover the first elections there, the election of Nelson Mandela. And that was in 1994. And it was one of the first times that RTE had broadcast live news bulletins from a foreign location. It was a very exciting time. And it was a wonderful example of a peaceful resolution of what had been a terrible, terrible and deadly conflict. And I suppose I came away from that thinking that politicians and politics and determination to resolve conflict actually can produce results. And it happened here a little bit later in 1998 with the Good Friday Agreement. So I find a lot of the stories that stand out for me are the ones that were positive, that showed people, if you like, at their best. Now, there were others as well, 9/11 and lots of terrible events that we covered over the years and right up to date with what's happening in Gaza and Ukraine. So, you know, that is also part of the story and part of what we've had to cover. But I've been very fortunate to be able to cover some stories I think that are very encouraging.
And Brian, you're currently on the News at 1, which involves an early start. Not as early, it has to be said, as when you were on Morning Ireland. But what are your plans for the future? Do you have any projects lined up? I
don't really. I have a couple of charitable interests that I'm involved in, and I'll just see what happens. I haven't really been making any plans because it's only just today that the news has got out. I know that what I really miss will be the people I work with. It's a wonderful, stimulating environment, a newsroom, and it's really the result of teamwork. There's 3 of us here in the studio, 4 of us in the studio, but as we know, there's half a dozen people in the control room, there's the guys in transmission, there's all the reporters and the editors and the sub-editors and all the production people that make a programme like this possible. And I'll miss working with those fantastic teams, whether it's here on TV in previous years or at the moment on radio.
And Brian, there are many people who worry about retirement and think, what on earth am I going to do with my time? Now, I know it's not till April, but do you have any such misgivings?
No, not at the moment, but since you mentioned it, maybe I should. I've thought about it, and I've thought about the fact that this is going to be an election year, and we could have a general election this year here, or maybe early next year. So, you know, will I miss covering that? And I'm sure I will. I'll be sitting on the sofa watching, you know, yourself and Dave and others covering that big story, and I'll probably feel a little bit of a sense of maybe some modest regret that I'm not there. But I'll also enjoy sitting back and watching it from the sidelines because, again, it's something that I've had the opportunity. I've been privileged to have the opportunity to do over very many years. So I'll come back to you after a few months and I can report on how retirement turned out.
You certainly will. And Brian, it's been a privilege working with you. I think I can speak on behalf of all your newsroom colleagues. And thanks so much for talking to us this evening.
Very kind. Thank you, Annie.